Wall Street Journal editorial board writes this: Mr. Trump is threatening the countries, including two neighbors and allies, with economic harm if they don't help him solve a domestic U.S. problem. This is an extraordinary use of tariffs, but Mr. Trump is going to use this threat often in his second term. Mr. Trump campaigned as the tariff man, and he aims to impose them early and often. Get ready for what could be a wild ride. Gene Marks, the Marks Group CEO and a small business expert, joins me now. Oh, it's going to be a wild ride. I mean, we've already been through a wild ride, so let's bring it on. What do you expect these tariffs to do?
I think the tariffs are going to have different impacts on different companies, Julie. But just keep in mind, if you're running a business and you're looking to see how these tariffs are going to impact you, if you are buying American and you're selling American, you're not going to be impacted by tariffs, right? Now, I'm not saying that's the case for most businesses or every business in this country, but that really is the simple way to put it. If you're running a business, if you keep it domestic, you will be fine, and therefore you won't have to raise your prices or face those kinds of price increases. For those companies, though, Julie, that are still getting supplies from overseas, they've got to be doing some things. And I got to tell you, I have a lot of clients right now that are making moves right now to make sure they're protecting themselves.
Yeah, I mean, but let's be realistic. I mean, a lot of American companies do not buy American. They do rely on a lot of merchandise that is purchased from other countries. Yeah. So, I mean, while this is it's set to punish other countries that don't voluntarily cooperate with President Trump on his immigration plan, such as Mexico and Canada, could it hurt American business owners at the same time and backfire?
It's definitely going to provide a challenge to those American businesses. And by the way, these are not just large corporations. There are a lot of small businesses. There are a lot of merchants that buy stuff from China and then resell them, on their websites or on Amazon. So they will certainly be affected by this. But, like anything else that comes across any challenge, people have to pivot. So right now, I'm seeing a lot of my clients buy right now from their overseas suppliers and store these goods in advance of this sort of tariff war that's coming, because the more that they can buy now, the less than they will be subject to those price increases later on. And by the way, there's costs of doing that. There's higher interest rates for working capital. There's higher storage costs that you're going to have to incur. But that's what a lot of companies are doing. And I'll tell you another thing that companies are doing, Julie. They're looking for alternative suppliers. Maybe you have a chance to buy American. Even if you can't, you can still move and pivot to another country other than China, which is going to face the largest level of tariffs, and try and pivot and use alternate suppliers as well. Yeah. Is this going to increase prices to you and me?
Oh, yeah.
It could. It could. It just depends on how the businesses decide to absorb those price increases.
Right.
Maybe they invest in technology or they reduce overhead.
I think if American companies are forced to buy American, it is going to cost more ultimately. And then who's going to pay for that? We are. I mean, we are going to be buying the merchandise that they are going to have to raise the costs on because they're not going to be buying from foreign countries. So ultimately, it does come down to the taxpayer dollar. We'll see how that works. I want to hear from Steve Forbes on tariffs. Watch.
In this case, it works because they know Donald Trump might be the kind of guy who would pull the trigger.
Okay.
He did last time. It was the first time in decades that a president imposed tariffs like that. They know that he is capable of doing those things. With the tariffs, it's going to be more like the sword of Damocles. You don't have to apply them. The fact that they know he could, I think, will push the negotiations.
I think that's a great point. The fact that he could will certainly speak volumes.
Yeah, it's certainly a negotiating tactic. There's no question about it. And Julie, let's not forget, I mean, there are tariffs that have been in place right now in Europe since the Marshall Plan after World War II. It is very tough for American companies to sell goods into many parts of Europe. And, if we use tariffs as a negotiating strategy, the idea there is to maybe reduce those tariffs so it makes it easier for companies to sell goods overseas as well. And that increases profits and hopefully keeps prices down as well. So there's a lot of room to negotiate with when it comes to tariffs. And, Mr. Forbes is absolutely right. It is a starting point. It may be leveraged. It may not be. But I do think the end game is to try and make it a fair, field. And one final thing, Julie, I have to say, I mean, I have clients I have clients in the furniture manufacturing industry. They can't wait for these tariffs to be imposed because the Chinese are dumping low-cost products and raw materials in this country and undercutting their prices. And these companies can't grow. They can't even hire anymore. So there are a lot of people that are fans of these tariffs. I just want to be clear on that.
I'm glad you brought up the Marshall Plan. That's a great point on tariffs with Europe. So, I mean, we'll have to wait and see keep fingers crossed, I suppose, for a prosperous new year. But thank you for coming on. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Gene. Gene Marks, thanks.